A moment of otherworldliness, a deep sense of foreboding, strange marks appearing on your body. Could these simply be innocent moments without meaning? Or the signs of an alien abduction? Hello and welcome to the Hoke Poke Pod, the show where we explore the strange and unusual.
Really? We're just two idiots poking stuff we don't understand.
So join us as we dare to ask the questions that nobody wants answered, such as, is sleep paralysis linked to UFO abductions?
Should hypnosis be considered a legitimate source of information?
And why are aliens so bad at keeping secrets? I'm Erica.
And I'm Emily.
I hope this episode doesn't alienate some of our listeners.
You're relentless, Erica.
I'll admit that's one of the worst ones we've had. So today's episode is finally about aliens, which is very exciting. Big passion project of mine topic.
I feel like we've been waiting a little while to do an episode on this.
I feel like you mentioned a supernatural podcast and aliens is one of the first things you think about. I've got an alien tattoo. We've referenced them a few times already, so we're finally here, but the topic is so vast and broad that we thought we have to start really, really small, which is specifically abductions. And I guess you could see this as a kind of analysis of how to tell if you've been abducted by aliens or what you might expect from being abducted.
We're here to help, really.
Really, which is, I think, every episode you can kind of take that metric out. We're here to help you.
Yeah. Because I think what we're going to do is walk you through the steps of what you can expect, combined with a few stories that we've come across.
A few true UFO stories, or true as in the people who've witnessed and experienced them certainly claim that they're true. And we're going to begin at the very beginning, which is kind of the start of the UFO, the modern popular story of abduction of aliens, which interestingly enough kind of really began in the 1950s or 60s. A lot of people will be familiar with this first case. It's kind of like the staple of alien abductions. There was actually sort of the first publicized case is sometimes credited to this one man in Brazil in 1957, but it was a lot less covered and I guess classic as the first story that you're going to tell us.
Yes, this first story is from 1961 in New Hampshire, and it was a couple by the name of Betty and Barney Hills, which is an excellent name, I must say. Driving through winding roads back to their house. It's always on like a long, windy road.
Which is a staple. We'll get into kind of the classics and long isolated roads do tend to be an area of heightened activity.
Absolutely. They saw a bright object and they started to feel very woozy. And suddenly 2 hours had gone by and they were all disheveled and felt like they had been examined. And there was a lot of confusion and I think Barney got quite ill as well afterwards. It wasn't until years later that they sought out help and they got some hypnosis. And from this hypnosis, they remembered that they were taken into this spaceship and examined, had their teeth examined, their bodies, had needles stuck into them, alien needles. I don't know what that's made of. Had a conversation with the aliens. And apparently Betty asked one of the aliens where they'd been in the universe. And the alien joked with her. Apparently aliens can joke with you.
Sense of humor.
FYI, if you get abducted, aliens can joke with you. So, do a comedy show.
That
I don't know.
actually makes me comforted. I like that idea.
Well, the alien said, if you don't know where you are, there wouldn't be any point in telling you where I am. Which
Okay, less of a joke and maybe kind of a dick alien. Like this person's just been abducted by you and is obviously confused and frightened. I don't think now's the time for like sass.
No.
Especially sass that you have to think about because that's a confusing sentence.
No. Under hypnosis, she drew a star map that was shown to her on the ship. Where is this star map? I would love to know where this star map is. But anyway, this story became huge.
Yeah,
and was
enormous.
it was one of the first publicized
I mean,
cases.
if you've looked into UFOs, you've certainly heard of the Hill case. Betty and Barney Hill. Because I guess it was that first mass media portrayal of alien abductions, and for the most part, it had all the staples of what you might expect from an alien abduction.
An interesting fact here is that there was a made-for-TV movie based on these people. In the 2 years after it aired, reports of alien abductions, previously a thing that wasn't really recorded, they went up by 2,500%. Is that a percentage? I don't really know.
Okay, I feel like we might just have to stop the episode here. I feel like that kind of answers all the questions I have about alien abductions. That's pretty damning.
Is it? Or...
Yeah, because if people weren't getting abducted before and then everyone watched a movie about an alien abduction and then suddenly everyone's having those experiences, doesn't that kind of imply that everyone is just sort of very heavily influenced by...
But we did an episode on the Worldwide Hum, and that only came about...
Yeah, but there wasn't a made-for-TV movie about the Worldwide Hum which boosted reports. It is strange that reports of alien abductions kind of only hit off in the 50s. But, okay, let's just take it back a step.
Yeah.
If you were going to get abducted, it might not necessarily be out of the blue. There are some warning signs, and all the information I'm going to give you about how to tell if you've been abducted or will be abducted come from this man named Thomas Bullard, who composed over 300 different sort of abduction experiences and basically made a list of common denominators amongst those abduction stories. So we're talking pre-abduction. There could be some warning signs. One of them is that you might feel a compulsion to be at a certain place at a certain time, which people often say will lead them to the location of the abduction. Maybe somewhere they've never been before, somewhere they have no reason to be at odd hours, and they just kind of feel this overwhelming urge to be at that place. Another symbol is a feeling of dread or anxiety, which... like, is that not just everybody? I feel like that's maybe in the 60s it was less common, but I just...
if every time I felt anxiety,
you were about to be abducted.
I was about to be abducted, that would be a lot of abductions.
I just feel like I'd spend my whole life on that alien ship. There'd be no point in them dropping me back to Earth because it's just too much at that point. As you said, as with the sort of Hill case, isolated roads, and you see this a lot specifically in North America. These long stretches of land with no houses, no witnesses, tend to be a hotspot of abduction, especially in kind of that sort of Midwest desert. You're looking at Nevada sort of states.
What is it about the long and windy roads and the crops? Why don't you ever hear of abductions happening in a library or a movie theater?
Well, I've got, as a skeptic, and when it comes to aliens, I am skeptical of abductions. I do believe there's certainly life out there. Just statistically, it's got to be the case. Yeah. I don't necessarily believe that they're popping down to Earth and sucking people up. My number one thing is there's no witnesses, so it's really hard to collaborate stories. If someone says I got abducted in the public library, I feel like there'd be a lot of people going, well, no, I was there and what we saw was this. Whereas we're in those isolated spaces also, and this is a theory that's only just occurred to me, these long stretches of road, and it's often at night, often at odd hours, where you're driving and the scenery doesn't change and you're tired, it could be very easy for you to zone out in the middle of the road.
And imagine you're being probed
not
by
necessarily,
aliens.
Okay, well that's... We'll get to the... Maybe not that extreme, but...
Quite the daydreamer here.
But... that's something monotonous, something that you can get like hypnotized into scenery like that. You're driving, you're not thinking, but you're still kind of busy enough that you're not going to fall right asleep. That's that weird kind of liminal space, which actually brings us to our next, perhaps, prediction of an abduction is sleep paralysis, which I hadn't heard of until I started to do research. But apparently a lot of people experience these abductions after they have experienced a bout of sleep paralysis, which is when you're sleeping, your kind of body locks up and you're consciously awake. You're kind of in that in-between space, and people will often see creatures and people in their room and standing on them, and it can be quite scary. And a lot of people report that this is kind of the prelude to an abduction, which to me is also pretty damning evidence that what people are experiencing is not an abduction. Because you've already sort of admitted that you're in this sort of heightened conscious state and you're freaked, and the sleep paralysis is very often accompanied by intense fear or anxiety or the feeling of someone being in your room that isn't there because you're kind of half asleep. So that imagining you've been abducted kind of just feels like the next natural step, which is not to say that people are making it up, but to say that if you're in that weird mid-consciousness, it could be very, very easily to not be able to separate the imagination from reality.
If you were someone who was about to get abducted, how much would that suck if aliens were actually doing that to you and making you feel anxious, giving you sleep paralysis?
Yeah, I would not
Those
be
poor people.
thankful. Yeah, which it sucks. And if aliens are doing that to people, cut it out. Like, I don't think there's
This is your warning.
need to be a dick about it. Like, I feel like there would be so many people who would be willing to sort of go and be abducted without all the hoo-ha and the discomfort. But the final sort of pre-abduction stage that I want to get to has a really cool name. And I have mentioned this before, but anything with a cool name I really respect. And this is called the Oz factor. I'm assuming from Wizard of Oz. And it's a feeling of being displaced or of your reality shifting or changing. Not necessarily noticeable, but in a way that is unsettling. Maybe you're feeling isolated and you feel like you've been transported from the real world into another world. And a lot of people describe this as the moment that the aliens have altered your reality and you're no longer on Earth, but you're in a ship or a planet or wherever it is that they're taking you. This kind of the Oz factor in which the world doesn't feel wholly real.
Wow.
Which is interesting because, I mean, everyone's sort of at some point, or most people experience some kind of sort of, depersonalization experience where you feel out of body, you feel a bit strange. And if these sort of people are also experiencing sleep paralysis, another feeling is dread or anxiety, these are all symptoms that can be really scary and isolating. And so I feel like there's a very obvious correlation between people who are experiencing these things and looking for an answer, and that answer could be aliens. Even if whether it's true or not, there could be comfort in finding a answer like that.
I guess, yeah, unless they were actually really abducted by aliens.
Unless they were really abducted by aliens, which
imagine being abducted and no one believes you.
Yeah.
What would you do with that?
Absolutely suck.
Because a lot of these stories, they've written testimonies and we'll get to that. But sometimes they aren't released or the evidence just gets destroyed. It's very strange.
Look, there's definitely something strange happening. All these cases of aliens and abductions, I don't believe that they're all. I don't believe. I don't believe that they're true. I do believe people are experiencing weird things, and I wouldn't put it past there being some shady. Okay, this is where I get conspiratorial. We're looking at alien abductions starting predominantly in the 60s, right? When there were all these, especially in America, science and kind of the Cold War fear going around was channeling a whole bunch of money into these top secret kind of psychedelic experimentation and ideas of what can we do with drugs, what can we do with chemicals, what can we sort of achieve with human consciousness. So it doesn't sound entirely realistic, but I don't think it's beyond the realm of realism that potentially organizations were experimenting on people. I feel like it's more plausible than alien life.
In flying saucers in the sky?
Well, yeah, I don't know, but maybe.
That have big unfolding ramps?
I don't. Yeah, this is what we talk about. I have seen something. It was a UFO in the fact that it was unidentified. I don't know if it was an alien, but it was when I was about, it would have been a youthful teen, probably 13, 14, and after dinner on our back balcony in the sky at nighttime, there was like a hot ball of red light moving very slowly horizontally across the sky. It looked like something that could have been a meteor, kind of flamey and sparkly, but it wasn't sort of flying at the speed or direction that you would expect space debris to fall at. And it was very, very strange. It looked like the movements of a plane, but it was kind of flamey and gassy.
Wow.
Very, very strange. I didn't sort of ever find what it potentially could be. It was many, many years ago. If I'd been now, I probably would have Googled it and found other people who'd seen it. But for all intents and purposes, that was a UFO.
Wow.
Right?
Or it was a UFO on fire?
Yeah. Which is kind of
Flaming ball of
alarming
aliens.
or comforting, depending on how you view the aliens.
If you want to meet them.
If you want. Well, this is the thing. When looking up aliens, I found the CUFOS, which is the Center for UFO Science or Research, and they had a sort of checklist of what it has to be to qualify as an abduction, which I thought was kind of a bizarre thing to do.
A checklist.
It was like a checklist. It was like it has to meet these criteria for it to be right. Like okay, like if I get abducted and it's not on this checklist, you're gonna be like the center of UFO studies is gonna be like, actually no, you're too like crazy for us. Are you kidding? But the very first checklist was a person must be taken against their will. So if an alien comes and knocks on my door and says, hey, this is my flying saucer, would you like to come up and give us some information, and then in exchange you can kind of look at our ship and whatnot, I would do that, and that's not an abduction. Like technically I'm not abducted because I was like a guest.
Yes.
But certainly they'd be interested in that. I would classify that as an alien abduction.
Where are the lines there?
Where are the lines?
I think that brings us to a story from 1967.
Ooh.
This is known as the Falcon Lake incident. This was in Canada. And this guy named, I'm going to attempt to say this correctly, Stefan Michalek. He worked near Falcon Lake. This was in Canada. And kind of same thing, he saw a bright light. But this time, he was like, what's that?
Naturally.
And kind of went towards it, and then it flew away, and he was like, oh, I'm just going to keep going and seeing what this is. Because I think he thought it was people who worked with him.
A very human response. I would do the same, Stefan.
And he walked all the way up to this saucer and saw that it was like this seamless metal thing, and the doors were open, and he heard voices inside, but he didn't see anyone.
Okay.
And he like put his hand in the door, and the door shut pretty much on his gloves, and they melted the tip of his gloves off. But after that, he had these like horrible marks on him. He stunk of sulfur. He was very, very ill, like almost died, I think. And no one could explain why. Like doctors didn't understand. They thought he was going crazy. And what's interesting is that the two stories that I mentioned, the aliens are described very similarly, where they have big eyes, grey.
The greys. That's a specific classification of alien, the greys. Quite small in height. Long fingers. Yeah. You can just Google a picture of the greys. They'll pop up.
So one thing that Stefan did, which is kind of odd before approaching the UFO, was that he sketched it. So I'm just wondering if you sketch the UFO, really don't like that.
Out there? Is he?
Look, he might be eccentric. He's not alive anymore. He did die in 1999.
That's very unfortunate because this is a man who kind of, I get it. He's taken all the correct steps. He sketched it, which I assume he didn't have a camera on him. That's the next best thing. And then he approached, he knocked on the door. Yep. This is someone who has rational responses to aliens.
The weirdest thing out of this was that all his medical records of him being at the hospitals disappeared.
What?
They said they didn't have this person on file.
Are you sure he's real?
He is definitely real. It is a real case.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's very...
See, now I just go government. I go that evil Canadian military is up to something.
I feel like aliens are just really selective with who they want to abduct.
This is one of the biggest
problems
like
curiosity.
I have with aliens is all these aliens are theoretically zapping down to Earth, abducting people in really very traumatic ways, taking them off the highway, in their beds, sleep paralysis, anxiety, like the works. It sucks. I don't think anyone who's been abducted by aliens would be like, yeah, it was a pretty neat experience. If you got a crowd of people and asked for a show of hands as to who would love to get abducted by aliens and like willingly go along with some experiments and answer some questions, you would get so many volunteers. So why are the aliens taking people against their will who are going to be miserable about it and not these people who would so sign up and be way more, I assume, compliant and interested? And I feel like it would be a less hassle for everybody involved, human and alien.
That's true. I mean, maybe they don't understand that that's how our society works. You can volunteer for stuff.
That paints a sad picture of alien society. Well, if that was an option, if the aliens popped down and said, hey, we want someone to come with us for just like 2 days on our ship, we'll do some experiments on you, would you go?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, hell no.
No?
Like, I'm a believer. I don't think I could handle that.
Why? But you don't know what it's going to be. I'm going to say they're not specific in their sort of recruitment.
That gives me more anxiety. See, I'm going to get abducted. I'm getting
But
getting
it's
nervous.
with your will. So according to the CUFOS, it's not abduction.
Just making friends.
Yeah, intergalactic friends.
Science experiment.
I want to go. Take me.
Look, I don't know them. I don't trust them. What are they going to do?
I mean,
because this guy,
they're being very forthright. They're being very
guess
honest.
so.
It's a good symbol, sign.
all of these stories, it's months, years down the track that they have burn marks on them and they are really sick and like they suffer these consequences for pretty much the rest of their lives. And not to mention the mental toll that comes with that if you think this thing has happened to you and no one believes you.
See, but that would take out the mental toll because you would have signed a waiver. An alien waiver, I would do it. I mean, it's the same thing. We talked about this the other week about being possessed by a ghost. Like, yes, potentially it could go really badly, but to me,
The risk
to me, the reward of, I'm hanging out with aliens. Yeah, I'm in a ghost or ghosts in me. Like, it's all real and I know and I have proof. And I'm like, that's so exciting to me. I feel like that's worth whatever negative consequences it comes with. I'm down.
Wow.
I'm so down. And I'm putting that out into the sphere for any ghosts or aliens listening. Hello.
I'm here
I'm
at your
here
service.
at your service.
I am not. Please leave me out of this.
Man. But okay, let's just say they did abduct you. Mm-hmm. Let's jump into the what could potentially happen. Worst case scenario, they abduct you.
Yep.
Now this is where the record varies a lot. Everyone has very different experiences with it. How that might look is for some people you're on a road driving and then you just vanish that time. For the people who remember it, it's you get sucked up into a light, think classic cow getting sucked up into the spaceship. Or you walk through some walls sometime into a light. These obviously aliens are making portals. And then you've got the examinations and it's always physical stuff, sticking, things in your belly button and examining your brain. And then for also a large portion of it, there's like a sexual element where they're like procreating with the aliens. And
pretty sure this is a storyline in The Sims, but
it's very common. Which I mean, look, I guess if from an objective perspective, if this is an entirely different people, you'd want to get a full picture of the human race, and sex is a big part of that. Mm-hmm. But that's sort of always it crops up a lot. Crops up. Get it?
just give us a minute.
And that's kind of the medical. This is where it gets weird. What the actual examinations or abductions is. People say they get interviewed. People say they get sort of given, tasks to do. People say they're asked to tour the spaceship. That really varies. It's very, very different.
Has there been any stories of someone who says they were impregnated by an alien?
Almost certainly. I didn't see any, but
neither.
I can guarantee you a quick Google would
How would
resolve
you-
that. Without a doubt, people have said that.
I think we need to investigate this next about potential alien children.
I don't know.
A DNA test would debunk
I feel like
that,
that's
surely.
so easily provable. But there are certainly... Okay, this is interesting. This is one of the things that popped up a few times, and some of the alien experts discredit this, and some of them think that it's legit. I don't know how you discredit something in alien abductions discussions, but they say that it's fairly common for the aliens to show you a human alien child and just see how you'll react to it. Which is
human
obviously
alien child. What?
it's like a hybrid of a human alien or someone that's been reproduced, and they'll just stick the two of you in a room and see how you react, whether you're affectionate or afraid or whatever it is.
Wow, I feel like they're having a lot of fun with this stuff.
This is why I think aliens. Okay, this is another one of my big issues with the idea of abductions. Obviously we've got just that much space out there. There's got to be aliens. That seems logical.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe that they're visiting us. That seems like a stretch. I really find it hard to believe they're abducting people. But also because if they are abducting people, I don't know if that's the kind of aliens I want. That makes me sad. If there are aliens and they do make contact with us, that's so exciting. We could learn so much. They could learn so much. It teaches us so much about the universe. But if they're these shady creatures that have been abducting us for 70, 80 years and running experiments and have never, that's really sinister and kind of fuck you.
Also, who's to say that they're the same species of alien? I feel like there would, if we were being infiltrated by aliens and not know it kind of throughout history, there would be different types of aliens. Statistically speaking, if the universe is massive and they're all coming to have a look at the human race.
Does that mean that they're all kind of just taking it in turns? Hey, you guys, you go down and abduct some poor farmer and run some tests on him, and then I'll go next weekend. That seems like bullying.
Maybe they're just like that.
I think with that, I don't want those kind of aliens to be the ones that are out there in the universe. That seems mean. I think they should talk to us. We're not, we're pretty bad, but there are some good parts about humanity.
I think next episode you just go out on a long winding road, find an alien to go and tell them your spiel.
It'll be my logs from
Don't be
driving.
mean.
I just feel like if these abduction stories really are aliens, that makes me really sad. Not only for the people who have been abducted, but for just humanity in general. This is what we get, just some intergalactic bullies. No thanks.
But what else happens when someone gets abducted by an alien in a spaceship?
Well, this is the thing, because it all comes down to this third element, which is the return. And the reason that I guess this middle space, the actual examination is so shady is because for the majority of cases, the return includes either total or partial memory loss.
Yeah.
These people don't remember what's happened to them.
Yeah.
And they're often returned in the exact same place they were, but time is missing, which is one of, I think, the most interesting parts of alien abduction stories is this missing time. Could be minutes, it could be hours later, where you're just back where you were, or you're even at where your destination was, and you just have no recollection of what's happened in that past time. Like you said, there might be strange wounds or marks on your body. And you could even sort of have those pre-abduction symptoms again, if potentially they're coming back to sort of visit you.
Yeah.
But the post-abduction, because of the memory loss, this is where it gets even shadier for me in terms of just credibility of alien abduction stories, is that so many of these accounts we have are recounted through hypnosis. And as much as I believe these people believe what they're saying, and as much as I believe something happened to them, whether it's something emotional, like an emotional sort of breakdown, or if it's they were abducted by something and this is sort of their brain's way of processing what happened, hypnosis is never going to be a credible, for me, is never ever going to be a credible source of information. Never. That's just, I'm never going to be able to trust someone who's been hypnotized to give information. Because it's like sleep talking. At best, it's like sleep talking.
Yeah.
You know? And that's gibberish.
Like, how do you know that they're real?
Yeah.
Memories.
They could have been picking up on something they watched on TV the night before. They could be picking up on the questions the hypnotist is asking them. It's not, it's like interviewing someone who is, sleepwalking. You're not going to get anything credible from them.
How freaky would it be if you decided to go get hypnotized and came out with this story that you had been abducted and you didn't even know, and you're like, do I believe this?
And
like,
this is
what
where
do I do?
This also comes to a moral thing. One, I think we should go get hypnotized in one of these episodes, not to see if we've been abducted, just in general. But that's the thing as well. Like if you have had this experience where you've lost time or you're feeling sick and all these feelings of anxiety, you go to a hypnotist. And you come out of that experience and the hypnotist says, look, you said all these things about an alien abduction in this, like, a lot of detail. I think that is a moral failing on the behalf of the hypnotist or anyone who was involved in that situation, because either you're not going to believe them and then it's just been a waste of time and money, or you are going to believe them and that's only going to cause more distress and more uncertainty for something that might not be true, something that might be pulling you away from knowing what actually happened, or causing you to sort of outcast yourself and become paranoid. And I feel like hypnosis as a therapeutic device is like, I have a lot of moral issues with it.
I feel like I don't know enough about it, but it's interesting you say that, because this is kind of what happened with the Kelly Cahill story, which is a Australian story of alien abduction, quite famous. It's kind of generally known as either the holy grail of UFO stories or an epic hoax, depending on which way you look at it. But this was another abduction that happened, all the same symptoms and a lot of memory loss that was recounted through hypnosis. And then they went on to tell their story, write it into a book. Kind of, there was a lot of back and forth, and then they started redacting all their statements and taking them back and confusing them. And this 300-page novel still hasn't been released to this day for whatever reason.
Yeah, and that could be because the people involved decided that they didn't want it published, or the publishers decided they didn't want it published, or I just feel like if someone has had an alien experience and without any hypnosis or outer influence, they said, this is what happened to me, this is exactly what I saw, then I'm way more interested in listening to that. As soon as somebody says, I blacked out, I missed a bunch of time, I went to a hypnotist and they told me I'd been abducted by aliens, I just feel like that loses so much credibility. And I think it's unfair on the person who is looking for answers.
Yeah. I think with a lot of these cases, they've already had an inkling that they've been abducted, and a few of them, they've had visitations from, which kind of goes into that sleep paralysis.
Exactly.
But it's almost like hypnosis is a last resort for them because they don't know where else to go. Like, that's just a bit terrifying on a lot of angles. I think that's very scary.
It's very scary if all you're relying on is your own sort of subconscious, which we know subconsciouses are faulty. Like, you don't even need to talk about hypnosis to talk about that. You look about false memories. It's really common and really well studied and reviewed subject where you can remember something that didn't happen to you crystal clearly. Like, I've got one from my childhood. I remember a situation I was not there for. But because that story's been told so much through my family, I can see myself sitting in the garden watching it happen, and I wasn't there for it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like, human memory is faulty. It is, at the best of times, when you start to introduce things like hypnosis, I think it gets very, very, very problematic. But I guess then the question is, these people who are giving these testimonies without the aids of hypnosis. And look, I don't want to talk about just spotting UFOs because I think that's a whole other topic. I think that's got a whole lot of other sort of consequences and potential answers. But we're talking about abductions.
I think it's undeniable that a lot of these stories are closely linked in terms of symptoms, experiences. One of them in particular, which I thought was a bit creepy, was that I think two of these stories, at least, I'm sure there's more, was that they heard the aliens' voices, though they weren't like speaking out loud. It's like they heard their thoughts, which was very weird. Like with Betty and Barney.
Yeah, telepathy. Such good names.
It was like,
I
I know,
they should be in a
so
cartoon.
good.
Yeah.
Like they heard them speak to them through the top of their car. And they were like, who is that?
yeah.
Like that, yeah, it's very, I don't know, if there are aliens that are abducting people, they have powers that we don't understand.
I think also why are they still, it's been hypothetically, if we're going off public media, which it's probably not accurate, these abductions have been going on for 70 years. Are they still going to keep doing them forever? Have they not learned all they need to know? Like, has alien technology not advanced enough that they've got sort of new systems? I feel like they wouldn't be resorting to needles and cranial exams anymore. I mean, human technology's advanced so much in that time. Certainly alien technology would have advanced.
Maybe they've made it all the way out here and gone, oh, I guess we better like stay here for like 100 years to make it worth our while before we go a million light years back to our planet.
The cost of space petrol is ludicrous. The idea of alien abductions is really exciting and fun. And I think that's why it's so prevalent in media, because it is such an compelling story. When I just can't quite. They're all so similar. They're all too by the book. They're all too sort of fantasy.
But wouldn't it be less believable if all the stories were different? Each one was just like more insane than the other?
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess I probably wouldn't be able to believe it either way.
And if we're coming down to different species of aliens, then they would leave different marks on the bodies. I feel like this is some kind of weird alien race on this planet.
I feel like, why are they all been ganging up on us? Like, all of these alien races are having a big let's go prod the human party and not inviting us.
Not at least asking for volunteers.
You would get so many volunteers. You wouldn't need to go into like an Iowa cornfield and abduct some poor person like who doesn't want to be abducted. You could get so many volunteers. There's a lot of freaky people out in the world and they'd be down.
Is that your verdict on this one?
That's this is my verdict for this episode. I don't think people are getting abducted by aliens. I don't, but I think the aliens really need a better sort of PR system. I think they need to get their message out there. They need volunteers, representatives, and I think they'd be a lot more successful at whatever it is they're trying to do.
I think also something we've landed on is that aliens really do seem like dicks.
Dicks. Just dicks. If they're really going around abducting people, then fuck you. That's not cool. That's not cool. You can't kidnap people. You can't do it and experiment on them and then not tell them what happened.
Yeah, it is a bit of a cop-out.
At the very least, let them keep their memories. Like wiping their minds like that. It's cheap. It's cheap and it's tacky.
I love how opinionated you are on
I'm
this.
angry now at the aliens. I wasn't before and now I'm mad at them.
Yeah. I think my verdict is if you feel like you've been abducted by aliens, I would kind of look at every other possibility first.
Yeah, definitely I think a doctor is your very first step.
Yeah. Maybe many doctors.
Yeah.
And then if you really feel like you've been abducted by aliens, write a book and release it, please.
Release the book. What is it? We do so many episodes about people holding onto information that they should be publicly releasing, like old Glenn in the box.
Yeah.
Like, you need to release this information.
Yeah.
All information should be public.
Because people want to know, and it will help other people know if they've been abducted.
Exactly. Like if the more information there is out there, the more we'll be able to prove these things, whether they're real, whether they're not real. The more information we have, just the more odds you'll have of figuring it out. And that's got to be good for everybody, not the aliens, mind you.
Yeah, I know. But it might help humans be able to avoid getting abducted. Maybe just don't drive on country roads at night.
Yeah, try not to be sort of in America. That's kind of a good rule for life, isn't
We
it?
sound like such city people. We're like, don't drive on a country road.
I don't even drive. I'm pretty safe.
You're good. Okay, don't drive. If you start to feel sleepy,
pull over and sleep in your car. This
Lock
is
the
good. This
doors.
is road safety now.
lock
You
the doors.
shouldn't
They can't get
be
you out of the
driving
car.
if you're sleeping.
Yep. Don't
I
walk
think
up
they
any
can get you
ramps.
out of their car.
Oh, they probably
Aliens.
can. If they've got powers to wipe your memory
They
and
definitely
like
can
put
unlock
marks
a car
on you.
door.
How does this work?
And I guess our final word is, if there are any aliens listening, I know I got a little bit aggressive at the end, and I apologize. I don't actually. Abduct me, and then we'll have just a good old chat about it. I'm down. I'll have a civil conversation with you about what you're doing wrong. You can tell us what we're doing wrong, and I think it'd be good for both of us.
I think that's a good idea. Please leave me out of that. I'm
yes,
happy.
she
I'm
does
good.
not want to be abducted, but I do.
Don't worry about me. Oh no, that means
Drop
that
me
I'm
off,
gonna.
though. No, drop me off. I don't want to stay, though. I just a couple days.
But according to this checklist, that means that I will be abducted and you won't because you want to go and I
oh,
don't.
fuck.
We need to swap.
These bastards. Okay, yes, I don't want to be abducted.
For all of you listening, Erica is doing a terrible wink right now.
That's terrible.
A great wink.
Thank
Solid.
you.
100%.
Thank
10 out of
you.
10.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. Aliens. There's so much to talk about. We'll be back. We'll definitely be back.
We will be back.
Talking about these little bastards.
I think that about sums it up. This has been the Hoke Poke Pod. I'm Emily.
And I'm Erica.
We'll see you next time. Hi, you've reached the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening.
If you like what you've heard, it would be fantastic if you could rate us or leave a review.
Or better yet, show us to some of your friends. Get the word out there about this spooky little podcast.
If you want to know more about us or this episode, you can visit our website, thehokepokepod.com.au.
We post updates, links, episodes, and any references we've mentioned, you'll be able to find them right there.
And we'd like to say a huge thank you to Giamo Timble for the amazing graphics and art he's made for the podcast, as well as our undying appreciation to Robert P. Kelly, a marvelous and ever-patient editor.
We love you, Rob.
And finally, if you'd like to contact us, you can send us an email at hokepokepod@gmail.com.
Please email us. We'd love to hear from you.
Feedback, episode suggestions, whatever takes your fancy, we'll be there.
Thank you so much for the support, and we hope to see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.